So what's a Thought Leader series? It's really just that we're going to bring in leaders like Gil Peñalosa tonight, who are thought leaders, that people that have experiences and have travels that will bring something to you. Our objective is to show people in Amherstburg and those from around the county. This morning we met with senior administrators from Tecumseh, from Windsor, from LaSalle, to Essex, to Lakeshore, and they saw a very similar presentation to this because they wanted to learn more. They wanted to make their communities better. And importantly, to dream bigger and aspire to be better communities. One of our values at the Amherstburg Community Foundation is to inspire. And by that, we want you to learn more, work more, create more, be more, and aspire for more. And we believe that bringing speakers in like Gil does exactly that. Okay. So Gil Peñalosa, if you've been reading social media or however you found out about this, you know that he's one of the top urbanists in the world. We're delighted to have him. He spends his time, he lives in Toronto, but he spends his time about 200 nights a year on the road, all over the world. He's just fresh from Santa Fe and Albuquerque, New Mexico. And when he gets on a plane tomorrow night, he's going right to Oslo. If you've been to Oslo or heard about it, it's on my bucket list for next year. This is a major European city that's going car-free. It's either 2020 or 2021. Why did we bring Gil in? Well, not all of us have the time or the finances to travel around the world and see what I call the best urban practices. So since you may not have the time, you're busy, maybe not have the resources to go to Copenhagen or Amsterdam or any of those lovely cities that are doing wonderful stuff, we thought we'd bring Gil to you. And so tonight, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, wearing a t-shirt that Ann Rhoda's team gave, and I was kidding him today. I said, "Where's that t-shirt?" And he said, "I'm wearing it tonight." Ladies and gentlemen, Gil Peñalosa.
No more blazer, now it's the t-shirt. Thank you. It's so nice to be here with all of you. You are so generous. That is one of the biggest assets that the community has, is each one of you. No one is being paid to be here. We're not gonna give away tickets to go to Jamaica in the winter. And you have so many options. You could be watching TV, chatting with someone, having dinner. The fact that all of you come to see together how to find ways that from everybody sharing and learning on how to improve the community is really exciting. A few weeks ago, it was celebrated the 50th anniversary that people went to the moon. And that reminded me that a visionary, President Kennedy, he was the one who had the vision, let's go to the moon. And in 1961, first time he went to NASA, he was saying hello to everybody. He would say, "Oh, hello, my name is President Kennedy. What is your name and what do you do?" And then people were saying, "Oh, I'm so-and-so, I'm a chemical engineer, or I'm a nuclear scientist, or I'm a rocket scientist, or what." And then he saw a janitor, and then he said, "My name is President Kennedy. What is your name and what do you do?" And he said, "My name is Mike, and I'm helping you put a man on the moon." That's the idea. I'm helping you put a man on. That's exactly what every one of you are doing when we are helping out in any way in our communities. And it was exciting because that was the first time ever that people took photos of the earth. And it should have been enough to realize how fragile it is and how totally interconnected we are. And the reality is that we should have acted and not been such a huge crisis around climate change now. So I hope that at some point when you think about what do you do? I hope that many of you are answering. I'm creating an Amherstburg with healthier communities where all people can live happier. The key element tonight I want you to keep in mind is how do we want to live? If we have a shared idea of how do we want to live, a lot of the decisions are pretty simple. For example, if we want children to walk to school, then we got to do small schools so that the catchment area is small and they're going to be able to walk to school. Unfortunately, all over Ontario, for the last 10 years, not just under the Conservative government, but also under the Liberal government, they were amalgamating the elementary schools. So then instead of having walk-to schools, we're creating gigantic schools that are drive-to schools. But that's the key element. How do we want to live? If Amherstburg had an idea, a collective idea of how do you want to live, a lot of the decisions would be very simple. But let's think about the world for a minute and then we'll come back down to Amherstburg. You know, half of the homes that will be around in 40 years do not exist today around the world. We got about 3.5 billion people, and within the lifetime of our students, we're going to go to 7 billion. And it could be very nice and could be very civilized. You know, this could be Amherstburg, simple, people walking and biking and using public transit. And of course, we need to densify. And density doesn't mean 40-story buildings. Density might be 5 or 6-story buildings next to each other where people are going to live very nice. And around Canada, the Canadian population, we're going to grow by 7 million in the next 30 years. 7 million is the same as the population of the 5 largest cities. As if we were going to do Toronto, Montreal, Calgary, Ottawa, and Edmonton in the next 30 years. And all of it is going to be urban. Whether urban means communities of 10,000, 20,000, 100,000, a million, we're going to do 7 Ottawas in 7 years. We're going to do 2.5 Torontos. The greater Golden Horseshoe that is right next door to you is going to grow by 50% in the next 25 years. So also in the GTHA, 1 out of 3 houses that are going to be around do not exist today. It's a great opportunity, but also a huge responsibility, because whatever we do or don't do is how people are going to live for hundreds of years. So if this is going to happen in the next 30 or 40 years, let's think what we have done in the last 40, because if what we've been doing is good, okay, let's just do more of the same. You know, my first experience in Canada actually was around 40 years ago. It was when the UN held the conference where Habitat was created, the Conference on Human Settlements. And I was lucky that my father was in charge of organizing it. So he went to over 98% of the countries around the world, inviting countries. And actually there was another Trudeau in charge in Canada. And he was telling us a little bit about all of the things that he was saying, how impacted he was with the levels of misery in places like Mumbai. And the issues of sprawl, the issues of the cities, how they were growing in the wrong places and in the wrong ways, and the lack of mobility. Unfortunately, many of those things that were happening, that people were talking about 40 years ago, are the same that we're talking about now. And we were probably impacted by Canada, by Vancouver and Habitat, because years later, one of my brothers that also went there, when we were finishing high school and first years of university, he became mayor of Bogota, and I've been working for over 25, 30 years in cities. But of course, there's some success in the last 40 years. One big success is that the population growth stopped. It peaked at around 1985, and since then the rate of growth has come down, which is really, really wonderful to be able to be sustainable. But since we still have many more children and youth, it's going to continue to grow till around 2040, 2050. But around 2050, the population is going to level. Also, the population in extreme poverty, as a proportion, it has gone really down, mostly because of China. In China, 90% of the population were in extreme poverty, so in less than $2 per day, anywhere from 90% to less than 1%. But nevertheless, a lot of the things that we've been doing in the last 40 years are not very good. This is how we've been doing cities in the last 40 years. We've been segregating the rich and the poor all over the world. We've been thinking of housing as an issue of supply and demand, when it's not an issue of supply and demand. We still think in Canada, all of these housing issues, especially in the big cities, in Toronto and Vancouver and so on, is because we only work as if it was supply and demand, and it has, supply and demand works when there is supply and there is demand. If I'm selling clickers and I charge too much money, then Richard is going to make clickers and charge less, and the price will come down. But the land is fixed, so it doesn't matter how much demand there is, there's not going to be any more supply. So we're sending the poor people to the worst places where there are no jobs, where there's no education, where there is no mobility. In the last 40 years, we've been focusing on cars, and not on people's happiness. And this is the kind of cities that we've been doing around the world. And now the emerging countries like China and Russia, Brazil and Mexico, they're doing exactly the same things. I mean, this is Florence, Italy, and one highway intersection at the same scale. It looked like we learned how to do cities, and when we unlearn how to do cities. Maybe that's one of the reasons why many of you like to live in Amherstburg, because it looks a little bit more like Florence than the highway intersection. I mean, the cities don't decide the what, how much population, that's at the national level. But the cities do decide the how. This is how we've been building cities in the last 40 years. No trees, no parks. Instead of parks, we are doing parkings. Lots of parking spaces all over the place. You know, including here. I mean, for the children, the elderly, people with disabilities, you become kind of like a slave to someone that has a car just to go out for an ice cream. So the last 40 years in general have been horrible. I live in Toronto. Most of what has been done in the greater Toronto area is horrible. It's not sustainable environmentally, it's not sustainable financially, it's not sustainable in any way. So we must create cities radically different from what we've been doing. We need to improve the cities that we have today, but we're also going to create cities for many people. I mean, let's put it into context. It doesn't matter if the city is 2,000 people or 500,000 or 1 million. The issues are the same. For example, we're living longer. We're living longer in the city of 2,000. We're living longer in the city of 1 million. If you are under 60, you don't drive a car in the city of 2,000 or in the city of 1 million. So maybe the solutions are different. Maybe in the city of 2,000, you need 1 or 2 buses. Maybe in the city of 1 million, you might need a light rail. So the issues are similar, but the solutions are different. But putting it into context, here in Amherstburg also, there's a public health crisis, physical, mental, emotional, and population growth and climate change. I mean, we see the effects of climate change every day in the news, even if some people don't want to believe in it. What is the role of the cities? You know, this is Chicago. This is downtown Chicago. And it's obviously that as long as there is sprawl, the impact is huge. That's why when sometimes we're thinking of doing a hospital in the middle of nowhere, this is the impact that it's going to have once you start building all of those houses in the middle of nowhere. We're living longer. And not just in Amherstburg. Everywhere we're living longer. You know, this is just 200 years ago. We've been around for 200,000 years. 200 years ago, which is practically nothing in the history, all the dots are the countries in the world. We didn't have any country in the world that had a life expectancy above 45. So many of us would be dead by now. Today, we don't have any country that has a life expectancy below 45. Not even the poorest countries in Africa. Why people 200 years ago, they were dying is because there was no clean water and sewage and vaccination. So when people are against vaccination, show them this. That's vaccination. But now people are dying of is lifestyle-related issues, heart attacks, respiratory problems, depression, anxiety. And part of it is how do we do our communities? I mean, the people over 60, today we got about 960 million. We're going to more than double in the next 30 years, going from 1 out of 8 to 1 out of 5. So the cities, let's keep in mind, how do we want to live? So we got to recreate the cities because they exist already. And we gotta recreate them around people. And making communities for people, there are some ingredients. It's like if you're gonna do some pasta, if you boil water, you put in the pasta, it's gonna be a spiceless pasta. And people don't like spiceless pasta. So then we gotta get ingredients, or people are gonna go somewhere else. Let's get some ingredients, and then we get a nicer pasta. Well, livable communities also have ingredients, like walking and cycling and parks and sidewalks. Those are the spices. And people want to live in a spice city, not in a spiceless city. How to get Amherstburg to be a spice city? I mean, let me give you an example, because it's not about awards. This building won a lot of awards, but if you go to this city for the first time and you don't know anybody, are you gonna go here to make friends? Not likely. Spiceless. This is spiced. It's very different. Many faith areas, they have parking that works for a few hours on Sundays, others work 24/7. And it's not about the money. This park costs a lot of money. What do you do here? Nothing. You come here, you take some photos, and you never go back because there is nothing to do. This other one didn't cost a lot of money, but you keep coming over and over because every day, every moment is different with different people. So what is the Amherstburg that you want to become? For example, using sustainable mobility. And some people say, oh, Gil, but you know, we are developed. No, walking and cycling is not a joke. This could be Amherstburg anytime. Fantastic. Walking and cycling is not a frivolity, as this little girl will tell you. You know, walking and cycling is the only individual mode of mobility for most people. It's the only individual mobility for all children and youth. You might be the son or the daughter of the wealthiest person in Ontario. If you're under 16, your only individual mode of mobility is to walk or to bike. So it should be almost like a human right to be able to walk and bike safe and enjoyable. Unless you think that only the people that have the money and the age and the desire to have a car have the right to individual mobility. That's why tonight we're also talking about democracy and human rights and equality and sustainability, because everything is linked to everything. So that's why it's how do we want to live. So I really want to thank the foundation and the city as well for inviting me to share some ideas. Of course, I'm not an expert in Amherstburg. I'm just barely learning. I asked Richard to invite me 3 weeks ago or a month, and we visited as much as possible. It's quite nice that you are equally distant from Toronto and from Chicago. Fantastic opportunities for tourism to bring people, or also to be a site for people retiring. Imagine from the point of view of retiring, people, the retirees, they could be so great for the economy. I mean, if I said, let's set up a company, let's try to attract a company that is going to invest $5 million in Amherstburg. People say, oh, it's not that easy. Well, and how about if I say, bring one every year, this year? But what if I say, okay, all of these boomers from Chicago and Toronto, let's bring 100. You bring 100 families, $50,000 a year, that's $5 million. $5 million this year, and next, and next, and next. And the benefit is that if 2 or 3 leave, then you bring another 2 or 3. But if the factory goes broke, then your whole investment is down. And you are right in the middle of these two. So it could be for people to come and live, or for people to come and visit. And it's quite nice. And then with Google Earth, as you continue to come down, then we start seeing too many parking and too many big roads. Especially parking. It starts to look like Houston. Not really. But that's just to get you moving. It's like the rankings. You know, a few weeks ago, McLean's had their rankings. And you were behind some of your next door neighbors. They ranked you like 99. You know, I wish they had ranked you 324th. Because that would have been like an electrical shock. Oh my God, we gotta do something. Tell people if they love you not to give you any awards. And that time when we went to some of the trails. You got beautiful trails around the city, around Amherstburg. But they need to be interwoven into the city. That's the only thing that I would suggest. How to get them into the city so there are no drive-to facilities but I walk to or by two facilities, totally interwoven, and we visited some of the parks, and we saw some of the roads, and it was exciting. But some of these roads are so big that the good thing of those roads being so big is that you can fit a lot of things on those. I went to one of the parks and he said, no, was the first sign, no. But I'm here that now Amherstburg is going to become the yes city instead of the no city. Where you don't have, for example, I wanted to go, everybody wants to go and take a photo next to a canyon. But then you put all of these fence. Why put a fence there? Has absolutely no purpose. People want to go and touch and take a photo, and now with the selfies. And I saw this, a lot of volunteers. I love that. All of these people working, improving the gardens, that is truly a symptom of a city where people love their community. When people volunteer time and they want to do, and I spoke to some of the city staff, and they are so proud of the kind of work they were doing in their parks and the library. You know, that park is one of the projects of the foundation, and this library is also one of the projects. And then Rich is going to tell you a little bit about their projects. And in between, we had a meeting this morning with city staff from various municipalities. And in between, I went for a run, and I saw these kids cycling. And then I was able to see how places like Sandwich, so wide. You know, it's more than 15 meters. All over the place. So you can easily fit a lane, 325 on one side, 325 for the other, you're at 650. You can fit 2 meters on each side for bike lanes, then you are at 1050, and you still have 4 meters left over. You can either make the lanes for the cars a little bit wider, or in some points you can put a turning lane. I mean, we gotta think of that. I saw people crossing the street, some people, some elderly that were having some issues walking. So we gotta work on that. I mean, I saw some people really like drive slow. So if drive slow, then the default speed in Amherstburg should be 30K an hour. Because now I think it's like 50, because even when there are schools, they bring it down to 40, but obviously it's way too high. And I saw this was interesting. I mean, the streets, of course, they move cars. But they also, the children and the people walking and the people on the wheelchair. I love so many things. I saw some women walking with their dogs. I saw men walking with their dogs. Maybe we gotta give a dog to every household. And then everybody's gonna be very healthy because everybody's gonna be walking the 365 days of the year. And then I saw some of the houses. I know, you know, the people that have a car as a mode of mobility spend 20% of their income, $1 out of $5, on that car. So some people are asphyxiated financially, and then they got 1 or 2 or 3 cars. But not only the car, I saw some of the houses where easily 20, maybe 30% of the house is for the car. It's for the car. Can you imagine? It doesn't make a lot of sense that we go and invest so much money, probably the biggest investment in our lives, and is to have 1/3 of it is for the car. And then I went back into Sandwich. But it's quite nice. I saw so many good things. Of course, in the streets, when you can lower the speed, then you can mix bicycles and cars. If the cars are going below 30K an hour. And I saw some beautiful parks, and I saw people doing skating, and people meeting. You know the magic of the dogs. This guy was walking by himself. He didn't know these women. But all of a sudden, the women saw the dog, they liked it, and they started chatting. That's what happens when you can walk at a slow speed. So I really love so many of the parks. But I show this image to say I try to learn as much as possible, and Richard and the city staff have sent me information, but I'm not an expert in Amherstburg. But I want to give you 8 messages. 8 messages. By the way, some of the examples that I'm using are from cities that are bigger. Some are smaller. Some are wealthier. Some are poorer. But that doesn't matter because it's not about copying and pasting. So don't think for a minute, oh, we are not New York, oh, we're not Copenhagen. No, I know we are not New York or Copenhagen. But open your mind and just think, how can you adapt and improve any of the examples? For example, first message is it's not about the money. It's about having vision and action. Before I immigrated to Canada, I was commissioner in Bogota. And now I've been advised in many cities, but before I was doing, for example, we built over 200 parks in one term, all over the city, small ones, big ones. This was one of them. The Pope came here, gave a mass for 1 million people, then the Pope left, and nothing happened. Nothing happened in 27 years. Why nothing happened? Because change is hard. You try to change in Amherstburg, and the gay people show up. You know them. They are the citizens against virtually everything. They are everywhere. You don't have the monopoly. But don't take no for an answer. Change is hard here and change is hard everywhere. You gotta find the solutions to the problems, not find the problems to the solution. And it's doable. Like it was like this for 27 years, and in 4 years we turned it into the nicest park for active, for passive, for contemplative, for things that people can do at their own pace. Or it's not just about active recreation, also passive, to smell the roses. Things with lots and lots of people, or things with just a friend, and the walkability. And I'm going to talk about the uses and the activities in a little while. But very, very successful park. Also, we did the ciclovia. What is the ciclovia? In Canada, we call it the open streets. I found a small program with a few thousand people, and we turned it into the world's largest pop-up park. Sunday mornings, we pop it up, and people come out. It's really, really simple. Do it in Amherstburg. Open streets to people, close them to cars, and the magic happens. I mean, Windsor is doing it on September 22nd. Windsor is doing 8 kilometers. Go to Windsor. I mean, is Windsor better than you? Sometimes it's nice to have a little competition between municipalities. In Bogota, we do 121 kilometers. Every Sunday and holiday of the year, 65 days of the year. And we get young and old and rich and poor and fat and skinny, everybody. And not everybody walks or bikes, so along the route we do aerobics and Tai Chi and Cha-Cha-Cha. The common denominator is physical activity. And it's something that is fantastic. 1 out of 4 people come out. And why is this good? And I love that Windsor is doing it because it changes minds. This is one day, but hopefully it will stop being an event in Windsor and become a program. I mean, do it next year in 2020 in Amherstburg and in every community around. What is the risk? You're not doing gymnasiums or arenas, so there is no risk. Do it from Victoria Day to Labor Day. Do it once a month, the first Sunday of every month. If it doesn't work in 2020, okay, don't do it anymore. But if it works in 2021, do it weekly. It reminds us that the streets are public space, public, and they belong to everybody. And the streets can have different uses according to the time of the day of the week of the year. I mean, even the City of Angels and Cars, now they have it monthly. And New York and other cities, it's about social integration. When I started going to India about 10 years ago, they didn't have any. Now they got more than 100 cities in India doing it. And lots of small cities all over the place. They work in communities of 10,000, 50,000, 10 million. And if your leaders don't want to do it because, oh, you know, it's India or Colombia, well, they're a little bit more snobby, tell them they're doing it in Paris. 52 weeks, even during the winter, they do it in Paris. Or in San Jose, California, where they got 55,000 cars here on a Friday. They got people walking and cycling on Sundays. It's something that is fantastic because we meet each other as equals. And that is something that is very, very powerful. Over 300 cities. We did over 280 kilometers in 3 years of protected bikeways. So when they tell you, why am I showing you some images of Bogota? It's because Bogota is very poor compared to Amherstburg. So when people say, oh, we don't have the money. I mean, Bogota has maybe 1/3 the per capita income, not even 1/3, 1/5 the per capita income of Ontario. But nevertheless, it's the decision. It's not an issue of money. That's why I'm showing you some of this. And how to get the connectivity. And some of the neighborhoods in Bogota are so poor that it's almost impossible for you in Amherstburg to imagine the levels of poverty. And why do you need to have really nice sidewalks and bikeways? Part of it is because it's going to be safer, but just as important is that we need to dignify the walking, the people walking. We need to dignify the people cycling. So we need to have really, really good quality of anything that is for people walking or anything that is for people cycling. And anytime that you do anything for cycling, it has to have a physical separation between the cyclists and the cars. There can be many different ways to have that physical separation, but you need to separate in all of the streets where the speed is higher than 30 km an hour. And tonight, when I'm talking about walking, I'm talking about anybody that moves at the speed of the pedestrian, including wheelchairs. But enough about Bogota. Let's talk about 880 Cities. I'm founder and chair of 880 Cities, and also was chair of World Urban Parks, now I'm ambassador. And I've been very, very lucky to have worked in over 350 different cities, all over the world, in every continent. And if you want to tweet anything, that's the Twitter. And World Urban Parks basically is an organization to share. You learn from others, you teach others, and we got different conferences and capacity building through Indiana University, and we got committees such as Children Play in Nature or Healthy Parks, Healthy Cities. Well, if you want more information on World Urban Parks, that's the website, worldurbanparks.org. But everywhere I go, people say, Gil, what's 880 Cities? What is that? It's communities for all. It's not about walking or cycling or parks or sidewalks or streets or libraries. Those are the means, not the end. The end is how can we help create successful communities. And I like to go and see the venue where I'm going to speak the day before. The other day I was invited to speak at a public place in Warsaw. So I went the day before and I see all of these people dancing. And I said, oh my God, how am I going to compete with this? And then I saw the DJ Vika. You know, why living longer? She's a businesswoman and goes from city to city, from park to park, organizing dances. That's part of the successful cities, where the older people reinvent themselves and recharge and do other activities. So it's about that. Successful cities and healthier communities where people are going to live happier. And always people say, oh, Gil, can my children walk to school? Can my grandparents ride their bike to get eggs or milk? Can they walk to public transit? Look, you don't need to be a transportation engineer. 3 simple steps. We call it the rule of common sense. Unfortunately, common sense seems to be the least common of the senses. Step number 1, think of a child around 8 years old, someone that you love, your son, your daughter, your grandchild. Once you have that boy or girl, then step number 2, think of an 80-year-old that you love, your parents, your grandparents, brothers, sisters. And when you have the child and the older adult, then step number 3, would you send them across that intersection? Would you send them on a bike to get eggs? Would they walk to school? Would they be safe and happy? If you do it, it's because it's safe enough. If you do not, it's because it's not. What if everything that you did in Amherstburg, everything, the sidewalk, the crosswalk, the school, the coffee shop, the library, the restaurant, everything had to be great for an 8 and an 80-year-old. Not 8 to 80, 8 and 80 as an indicator species. Because if it's good for the 8 and it's good for the 80, it's going to be good for everybody, from 0 to over 100. We need to stop building cities as if everybody was 30-year-old and athletic. And let's create cities for all. It's a simple but powerful concept. 880 cities, communities for all. Number 3, let's move on sustainable mobility. Walking, cycling, riding, taking public transit, new uses of cars, walking. Every single trip begins and ends by walking. You know, that's how we were created. It's so exciting. It's just like the birds, they fly, or the fish swims, and the deer runs. People, we walk. We walk. Even in the middle of the winter, we walk. I Google walking, and I see all of this. Looks like if Google was being paid by Lululemon. You don't need a special clothes to go walking. And you know, when we walk, we're so happy because we use all our senses. All of a sudden, we're walking, and we see the children playing. And we see the youth going to school. And we hear the birds singing. We go in front of the coffee shop and we smell the aroma. We see parents walking. We see grandparents walking. We walk in the summer. We walk in the winter. But we got to make it safe. And it's not safe. Yesterday, people driving cars killed 741 people walking. That's more than a person every 2 minutes. That's not civilized. And we're not doing much about it. You know, a few months ago, 2 planes crashed and everybody died. What did everybody do? The leaders, they grounded all the 737s in the world. They've been grounded for months and maybe for more months. Well, every single day, The equivalent of 5 of those planes full of people are the people walking that are killed by drivers using cars. 5 planes yesterday, 5 planes today, 5 planes tomorrow. And they're not accidents, they're incidents. I know that many of you don't love Toronto. That's why you come to live in Amherstburg. In Toronto, a person driving hits a person walking every 3.5 hours. And a person riding a bicycle every 7.5 hours. And I don't know any councilor in the city that has the safe streets as one of the top 3 priorities. None. And then we approve Vision Zero. Vision Zero says that we should assume that people are not perfect. So no one should be involved in any incident. And that works in Sweden. That began in Sweden, in many communities the size of Amherstburg, of 20,000 people, or 50,000, or 100,000. But if you don't put money and actions, then it's not Vision Zero, it's zero vision. I mean, we know what needs to be done in complete streets. They gotta be safe for everybody, for the people walking and cycling and transit and cars. It's about everybody. Last week I was working in New Mexico, in Albuquerque and Santa Fe, and I saw they put lights on the sidewalks, and I said, wow, now you are putting lights on the sidewalks, except that you are putting the post in the middle of the sidewalk. And they said, oh, but it's part of the norms. I said, I'm not saying it's not part of the norm. I said, you gotta change the norm. And then I saw sidewalks on the neighborhoods, brand new sidewalks on the neighborhoods, and they look like a roller coaster. Imagine if you are on a wheelchair, or if you have a baby taking a nap. Are you gonna take him over that? Or having painted lines for cycling? Or even having the bicycles protecting the parked cars instead of the parked cars protecting the cyclists? I mean, we gotta improve walking. And it has to be a priority, and it's not a priority when we do sidewalks like this. Or like that one. Or when we allow the cars to park on the sidewalk. Or when we don't even do sidewalks. We're telling this woman every single day, you are a second-class citizen, when we don't even do sidewalks. Or when we allow scooters and other things on the sidewalk. You're gonna get a lot of scooters because every community is getting them. I was working a few months ago in San Antonio and I saw those scooters everywhere. We need to think of the people that are blind, the people that are on wheelchairs, the people that have any disability. Those scooters should never be on the sidewalks. I mean, the sidewalks is to walk, sidewalk. The mayor of San Antonio asked me, what should I do? I said, I'll give you a rule of thumb. We walk at 5 kilometers an hour. Anything that moves at more than twice the speed of walking, so 10 kilometers or more, should be on the road. Those scooters go at 30 kilometers an hour, so they should be on the road. Maybe they should develop a partnership with the cycling community to develop networks, protected networks for bicycles and e-scooters. I mean, the sidewalks, there is nothing as important in a city as the sidewalk. Because when you are on the road, you're going from point A to point B, on bicycles, on cars, on public transit. But not on the sidewalk. On the sidewalk, that's where we meet boyfriends and girlfriends, we meet our neighbors, we meet the person selling flowers and fruits and vegetables. I mean, the sidewalk is the life of the city. The sidewalk, we use the sidewalk in the summer, we use it in the winter. The sidewalk is where the children catch Pokemons. Others catch buses. You know, the sidewalks is life. We said, oh, we're gonna go for a coffee, and we take 90 minutes. Why? Because we went, we sit, we watch people go by, then we go get the coffee, we sit again, we watch others. The sidewalks really reminds us that walking is much more than walking. When I work in Buenos Aires, I see people dancing tango on the sidewalks. The sidewalks should be almost part of the family of the parks. Maybe instead of having public works, it should be parks taking care of the sidewalks. Maybe here in Amherstburg, one of the things you should say, walking and sidewalks, even the fact that walking is good for the environment and for public health and mental health and for the economy. And in Amherstburg, 2-word law, pedestrians first, pedestrians first. You should be the first community in Ontario with this law, 2 words, so that everything that you do in the city, in the private, in the public, in the NGO sectors, first question that planning is gonna say, okay, how are you treating pedestrians? I mean, if we're gonna improve walkability, we know we need to lower the speed. All of the streets in Amherstburg should be 30 an hour, except the main ones. So the Sandwich and a few of the other main ones, they can be higher. But all of the residential will be 30 Why 30? If you get hit by a car at 30 there is 5% probability of being killed. At 50, it's more than 80%. So that is really, really important. Look at the view that you have if you're going at 15 miles or if you go at 30 miles. It's very, very different. This is an issue of life and death. If you get hit at 20 miles, which is like 30 kilometers, 1 out of 10 people will be killed. At 40 miles, that is around 60 kilometers, only 1 out of 10 will survive. But not only that, a lot of people are going to walk. We need people to walk as a normal part of everyday life. But people don't like walking when the cars are going by at 50 or 60 miles an hour. Instead, people like walking when the cars are going slow. So not only you are not going to be killed if you get hit, but also many more people are going to walk because they're going to find it much more enjoyable. When the cars are going slow, people walk differently. You walk with the dog and someone likes the dog, they stop you to talk about the dog. The neighbor wants to chat with you. It's very different than relationship. You walk at a different pace. These are not technical issues. I mean, if we have a crosswalk, if we have a small island in the crosswalk, we eliminate more than half of the incidents. Why do we still have crosswalk with no island when we know that we are going to save lives? Any time of the year, the children are going on a field trip, they don't cross in one traffic light, or they can wait for the next one. That's how people are being killed in the intersections. Older adults are being killed, elderly people with problems of mobility are being killed twice as many as the proportion of the population. So we gotta give the priority to the small children, to the elderly, to the people with disabilities. And obviously sustainable mobility is not just walking, also riding bicycles, using cars, public transit. For example, riding bicycles. It could be so fantastic. In Amherstburg, it's so small that you could really bike from anywhere to anywhere. This could be the school bus in the 6 months of the year but also you can adapt it for the winter time. And people do it in Copenhagen and in other places. I mean, you can be as good as Copenhagen or any of these communities. Why not? Part of what you need to do is to be bold and be ambitious. And it's not because they are poor. They have a higher per capita income than almost any city in Canada. And the weather is horrible. It's cold in the winter, it's hot in the summer, it rains all year round. But people bike. Not only people, 41 out of 100 trips are done on bicycle. But they're not saying 41 is enough. Now they want to go to 50. And men don't need shirts, and women don't need special shoes. So if you want to improve bikeability, improving bikeability really is not about painting shadows on the streets or just paint that the cars are going to respect, or it's not about putting bike sharing system. That is like getting the saddles before the horse. I mean, anything that you do, if it's not safe for an 8-year-old and for an 80-year-old, is nothing. Nothing. Don't even call it a bikeway. So anything that you do in cycling, think of them. Think of the children. Think of the immigrants that come from places where cycling is not part of the culture. Think of the older adult on the trike. I mean, just do an example. In front of City Hall, put some protected bikeways on one side and have citizens and media going on one side and then nothing on the other, and then ask them where they felt more comfortable. I mean, the only thing that really will increase cycling is if we lower the speed in all the residential streets and if you develop a grid of protected bikeways. So what I said about 30K for walking is the same thing for cycling, but you gotta do a grid so it will connect. A grid of AAA bikeways. What's AAA? All ages and abilities. This is not for the 20 to 15 spandex. It's for everybody, all ages and all levels of abilities. But you gotta connect origins with destinations, where people live with the schools, where people live with the places of work. And you gotta think of daytime and nighttime. And if you don't have the money or the political decision to do it permanent, then you don't have to do it permanent. But don't just paint a line, because people are not gonna use it. Enhance that painted line with some plastic bollards or any type of separation. And then also make it nicer, having parking or having classes or whatever. The nice thing about a small community like Amherstburg is that you don't need too many protected bikeways. Probably you need on some of the main ones, like the spinal cord of the city, like Sandwich. And then you might need also some of the bigger ones crossing. But more than anything, you need to lower the speed everywhere to 30K or less. This is what they do in Copenhagen. All of the neighborhoods are low speed and they have connectivity. I mean, that's what cities that are honest about Vision Zero are doing. Seattle last year, they lowered the speed to 30 km an hour, 4,000 kilometers of roads. 4,000. Why? Because Seattle doesn't want to have people dying on the streets. And we got to improve public transit. Someone said the civilized city is not the one where the poor have cars. It's the one where the rich use public transit. And I went to a city where the mayor said, oh, our citizens didn't like buses. So he put a nose on the bus, he covered the wheels, and now they look like trains. Part of it is marketing. Part of it is marketing. For example, let's don't do this horrible thing that people do in some of the buses. Why do we think that people using buses are gonna like that if we never see it on the private cars? I mean, do sell advertisement, but don't cover the windows. Especially don't cover selling cars. Because then it's very painful. And some of you might say, oh, but we only got 20,000 people. So what? If you're under 16, you don't drive. Many elderly people are losing their driver's license. By the way, they have the impact as if they had been informed that they have cancer. It's not because they love cars, it's because people love mobility. People want to age in place, want to continue visiting the same friends and shopping in the same stores. Wasaga Beach, they got 20,000 people. The mayor kept saying, let's buy a bus. And people say, oh no, but people are not going to use it. Well, they bought one and they started using it. And then the second, and then again, and then it was 5 days a week, then it became 6, and then it became 7, and now it's 24 hours, 7 days a week. It's about connectivity and frequency. We want people to age in place. We gotta have sustainable mobility. I'm not saying that this is the end of the car industry, but the way we use cars is changing very, very fast all over the world. Fortunately, in Canada, the young people, the 16 to 24, in the last 4 years have purchased fewer cars than in the last 40. Actually have gotten fewer driver's license. I mean, there's many new uses, even driverless cars. What is the impact of driverless cars? There are many scenarios. People do these nice drawings. Oh, everybody fits. And they say, oh, and now we're not going to have traffic jams with the driverless car. As if the traffic jam was the driver. It's the car. If we don't change our behavior, we're going to have, it might be even worse. It might be great or it might be horrible. It's up to us. For example, we need to put a limit on the growth of cities. If cities continue to sprawl, nothing is going to work. Nothing. That is an urgency. In all the cities all over the world, they need to be compact. Not only to be able to have public transit, but many other facilities. But if we don't have a limit, then people with driverless cars, they're going to say, oh, I don't care living 10 or 15 minutes further away because I'm not going to be driving. I want to be taking a nap or I want to be reading a book. We might have many more cars on the road because now the 5-year-olds, the 10-year-olds, the 100-year-olds are going to be going in their car. They don't need a driver's license. So how are we going to regulate this is critical. Number 4, let's have parks for people. I mean, the great parks in Amherstburg, they're great. It's if people visit and stay and come back. It's not if they win awards. Let me give you some symptoms of nice parks and public places. One of the symptoms when you go out tomorrow is good places to sit. This guy needed 5 chairs to be happy. His feet, his Big Mac. Some people say, oh, monkey see, monkey does. No, sometimes it's people see, people do. We don't put benches on the sidewalks, and that's what happened. Or people say even put nails, so young people won't even sit. This guy was so tired he had to sit on his briefcase, while his friend actually fainted. And his wife is sitting on their baby. But if you have nice places to sit, it's kind of magical. Even this old lady in the middle of the winter is reading her book, and when people sit in movable chairs, they don't even sit facing each other, they sit facing others. It starts to rain and people won't even move. Working in Istanbul, I saw these people sitting on some bollards when it was ironic when they got like 20 chairs in there. Another symptom is sociability. If you see people talking to each other in the public place, it's a good symptom. Another one is diversity. We see children, we see youth, we see older people, we see people with disabilities. Another symptom is affection. We are affectionate if we feel at ease, if we feel good. Another symptom, high proportion of women. Women are more selective. If the place is not clean and feel safe, they're not going to be there. So these are some symptoms. What is the biggest problem of parks that I find in Canada? Is management. Because people tend to confuse and think that management is the same as maintenance. No, it's not the same. Maintenance might be 20% of management, picking up the garbage and cutting the grass. You know, all of a sudden we put 4 walls and a roof and we call it community center and we say, oh, we need a director and we need yoga and Tai Chi and we need to go to the schools and we need to go to the seniors groups. But we do a park and we think it's going to take care of itself. No, we should think of the parks almost as outdoor community centers. Of course, we got to pick up the garbage, but we got to have grandparents and grandchildren doing bread. It's about uses and activities, people running and walking and playing chess and having lunch and taking a nap. Management is having volunteers but giving the tools to the volunteers. Management is about asking the citizens before, during, and after you do something in the parks. And you gotta engage people of all ages, like the children. I think it's really important to engage the children. For example, we take them to the parks on a full day, 8 hours, on a process of visioning with cameras and all kinds of things. Why? If we educate children very, very well, they go home and then they educate the parents. So if we want to change mindsets, and that is one of the advantages of the small communities. If you go to 3 elementary schools in Toronto, people won't even know that you were there, even if you go to 30 elementary schools. But here, you can go every single elementary schools and do some kind of workshop with the kids in first grade, another one in second, another in third, and so on. I mean, management is about having resources, human, financial. It's about having equitable so that throughout the city we have, so that we not only have these facilities with 12 soccer fields. We gotta start thinking, what creates better community? To have 12 fields in one place or to have one field in 12 places where people can walk to? And they say, oh, but what about the soccer tournament? So are we gonna do this for one weekend of the year? I mean, we gotta have safety. Safety is not like this I saw in London, beware of the thieves. This is like an invitation to the thieves of the city. You need a lot of police on the park when they're empty. You don't need them when they're full. So what is the cheapest way to have safe parks and public places and the waterfront? Is have uses and activities. Sometimes I go to the cities and it seems easier to find $500,000 to renovate a park than a few thousand to make it work. I say, oh, let's do movies in the park. We don't have money. Let's do walking groups. We don't have money. There is no money for anything. That is what makes parks work, the uses and the activities. Let's keep in mind that empty parks have very few benefits. So we gotta start thinking of the activities and management, promoting activities. Sometimes management is invisible, but someone is promoting that market of flowers or people that doing laughing yoga. Should we have small or large parks here in Amherstburg? Unfortunately, you gotta have both because they satisfy very different needs. The small neighborhood parks is where we meet our neighbors, we develop a sense of solidarity, and it's really good because if something is happening in my neighborhood and I know my neighbors, I go out and help. If I don't know anybody, I shut the doors and I stay inside. But we're not gonna be able to play soccer or tennis, so we gotta have the medium-sized parks. And if we're gonna go canoeing, we wanna go by the river and have a linear park, so we gotta have the large ones. We need, in Amherstburg, a community-wide system, with small, with medium, with large, with active, with passive, with contemplative parks, and for all ages. We did a study for the US and Canada in North America with City Parks Alliance. The population of 0 to 18 is around 20%. But park users, they are 38%, almost twice the percentage of the population. But the people over 60 is the same 20%, except that they're only 4% of the users, even though they have most of the time available. Why? Because we don't do activities for older people in the parks. That is very urgent. It's about doing the hardware and the software. We need the infrastructure. We gotta have the games. The number one activity, walking. Every single park here in Amherstburg should have a walking path. It can be a big park or it can be a small park. It doesn't matter. But not only have the park, let's put a sign, one loop, 400 meters, 2 loops, 800, and then people go home and say, oh, today I did 1.6 kilometers. How do you know? Oh, because I did 4 loops and it said that 4 was 1.6 kilometers. And then people take their spouse, the children, their grandchildren, they go to the family doctor, and it doesn't have to be gigantic tracks. This one is a park in Charlotte, North Carolina, where it's the size of a tennis court. Half of it has children playgrounds, the other half has playgrounds for adults, and then it has a walking path around it. I mean, we know that walking is by far the number one activity, but also people want to do other things. They want to do knitting and Tai Chi and yoga and reading and bird watching. and watching other people, having movies. It's about the activity. So we need benches and walking path, but we also need game tables and restrooms and water fountains. We know what needs to so let's do it. 5, let's not copy. This is not like on the computer that we copy and paste, but yes, let's adapt, because everybody can learn from everybody. You know, a counselor from Timmins, Ontario, you know where Shania Twain is? Timmins, 43,000 people. The counselor called me and said, Gil, you gotta come and see this park. I said, I'll go, but why? She said, because 2 years ago you came by and you talked about the pilot projects in New York. You know, she could have said, oh, Gil, I don't care about New York is 8 million people, Timmins is 40,000. No, she paid attention, she opened her mind. I said, it's not about copying and pasting. She really did. So she went back to Timmins, she got the planters out, she got tables and chairs, and all of a sudden in front of City Hall, she created a linear park. From May to September, from Victoria Day to Labor Day. Very successful. In Cowichan Valley, all of a sudden they got all of these murals, and people go for the tourism because it has beautiful murals all over the place. You know, in Cochrane, Ontario, 5,000 people and 2 polar bears. I went there and I was talking about a visit that I had done the week before in Google, so I showed them the restaurant that is open 24 hours, and they invited me to look at their driverless car. But when I was showing the images and all the kinds of things, the drones and whatever, somehow there was a teacher from a secondary school, and what he really liked was this bicycle. And then he went back to the school and he met with the students and said, oh, why don't we do something? And one of the students said, why don't we do a bike share? I said, oh, but where are we gonna get the bicycles? Let's go to the police. The bicycles that are lost and found, let's fix it. So then they got all of the bicycles from lost and found, and they started painting them like the Google bikes. And now these students from that secondary school got a bike share system in a community of 5,000 people. And 85% of the people have a bike within walking distance. In another small community in Orangeville, Ann Fenton is a physical education teacher that saw that fewer and fewer kids were walking to school. She said, why don't you walk to school? Because they're afraid of the cars. So when the kids went home on holidays, they came back, and Ann was dressed up as a pilot. She shut down the parking lot. The first day, the parents were really upset. She thought they were going to beat it up, but she said, good morning, good morning. The kids loved her. And at minus 24 degrees, the kids started to walk, and the kids started to bike. We need hundreds of Ann Fenton, because part of it is hardware, part of it is software. It's about progress and infrastructure. In England, now in London, they got this sticker that in the retail is going to allow people over 60 go in and use their restrooms even if they don't purchase anything. Because then they are developing loyalty and being good community members. In Baltimore, they're getting people that go and fix people, both the person as well as the homes. In England, they got these runners in 10 different cities that they go out and they fix people's homes. Or they visit. You know, loneliness is one of the biggest issues. In Canada, 1 out of 5 people over 70 don't have a family member or a friend visiting more than once a week. So these people, they knock on the door, they go in, they have a tea, and then they continue running. But it's something about giving back, or having apps to see what are the best ways, or having accessibility in public transit, or having, like in Portland, a garden for people with Alzheimer's. Or in Singapore, they got the Green Man Plus. If they give you a card if you have problems with mobility, and then you can have the traffic light give you more time in the crosswalks. Beijing, over 2,000 gyms for adults, and now those gyms are going all over the place. You know, working in Toyama with Mayor Mori, and one of the things he told me, he says, if we want people to walk or bike or go to the parks, instead of using ties, then put them on the side. Yeah, we gotta change. They are losing 30% of the population. Huge problem. Imagine that they told you that in the next 20 years they're gonna lose 30%. Well, one of the elementary schools, they turned it into a place for older people. And one of the things that I like the most working with Mori is that this park, where people with Alzheimer's, they come here, the family members, instead of leaving them in their home, locked, because, oh, they're gonna get lost. No, they don't get lost. They bring them to the park, and then they go to work. At 8:30 in the morning, they go to work, and they can either do part of the activities or be on their own, doing whatever, walking, doing. At noon, the family member comes to pick them up. If they don't find, no problem. Everybody has a bracelet with a GPS. And if they spend 2 days in the park with all of this nature, they double their anti-cancer sales. You know, Melbourne used to be a horrible city, and now it's one of the top 5 cities. What are they doing? Things that you can do in Amherstburg. For example, they didn't have trees in the streets. They put all of these trees, and now it's great. It's great for health. It's great for the environment. It's great for the business. They had a lot of laneways that were dark and horrible. Now they got business. They partnered with the city and improving these laneways into making it successful business. And it's one of the things also that can be done. No one wanted to live downtown. Now everybody wants to live downtown. Places like Rotterdam, that was torn down during the Second World War and was built around like a Western city. Now in the last 8 years, they've done so many changes. They want to do a bicycle parking. They did it a little bit underground, so it's not right on your face. They had this park that was not very inviting. So look how they changed how green in the park, it improves. They got all of these cars all over the place on the streets, on both sides. They take away the cars on one side and look what happens. So it's kind of like magic. Parks, places that they're going to do a building, but maybe 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, they say, let's open it up instead of having that, and let's put grass, and it totally transforms. So these are some of the things that can be done anywhere. Look at this small community, Odense, a little bit bigger than Amherstburg, but not that big, 190,000 people. They did a study of mobility, walking, cycling, transit, cars, everybody. They thought of the winter, they thought of the summer, they thought of people going to work, people going to study. Lots of communications with the citizen through the internet. Or any street with more than 5,000 cars a day has a physical separated bike lane. This one is at one level for the cars, 5 centimeters higher for bikes, 5 centimeters higher for pedestrians. Or this is another one. This could be Sandwich Street. Could be great. Or some of the major ones that cross it. Counters, so that you know if you don't count, then you don't really count. This goes to 0 at midnight every day. So when I took this photo, over 8,000 bikes had gone by, put in air, and if you are going to have a lot of tourists, put really nice, simple signage. And have this when you click coffee shops, and then you're going to get a lot of ones. And here, of course, you got a nice coffee shop, the caffeine something, but also you got many others, not only that one. And lockers, and restrooms, and bicycle parking, and all kinds of things. And then people use their bikes, people walk, people are on the outside, but it's making it safe. And the pedestrian streets, you leave your bikes out. And this city has been transformed in so many ways, and people are so much healthier. And when near the schools, the speed is not 30 km an hour. Near the school, the speed is 0 km an hour, 0. There are no cars in front of the school. That is the new trend around the world. No cars in front of the elementary schools. And then the kids are going to feel safe to get to the schools walking or cycling. And actually they are putting ping pong tables and other kinds of games so that they can play around this. Instead of people rushing because their parents are late to work, no, they make it safe. And around the school, it's not 40K, as I saw some signs here, it's not 30, it's 0. Let's keep in mind that in so many ways the quality of the infrastructure in our community is a symbol of the respect that we have for people. We're not talking about weather. I was working in Gothenburg. This is the head of planning and the head of health and the head of parks, the 3 of them. They wanted to show me where the city is going to grow, and they're going to do a big park. And right now there is nothing, but that is where they're going to grow. And it was raining very hard. And I said, you know, it's raining? And they said, yeah, there is no such thing as bad weather. It's bad clothing. You know, these kids, no one gets cold by getting wet. Just the opposite. Get all of these kids, put them inside a room. One of them has a cold, and everybody's going to catch a cold. But here, outside, they're just having fun. And they're testing games for 1 year before and any company, any planning that wants to bid to do the master plan, they got to go and test their ideas. And it's something that is really quite nice. I mean, I know that in Amherstburg you got winter. I've been living in Canada for 20 years. I know that you got 20 horrible days. This girl knows it. And you got another 70 that are pretty lousy as well. But you got over 200 that are nice. You know, one of the problems that happens in Canada is that we focus on the 20 horrible days. And then we mess up the 365 days of the year. You know, there are many cities, like your favorite city, Toronto, that work like a gigantic vacuum. That they suck the life out of the city. In Toronto, we do this underground path that is absolutely horrible. It has a little bit of light, 1 hour in the morning, 1 hour at noon, 1 hour in the evening, Monday through Friday. But here, they don't integrate. They totally segregate. They don't want young people on skateboards. They don't want older people if they are poor. They don't want, it's totally segregates. When you go to Toronto, anywhere where there is the underground path, you go above and there is nothing, only gigantic entrance to buildings. As soon as the path ends, you start having flower shops and coffee shops and people. It's totally different. I mean, in some places like Calgary, they do it above ground, they call it plus 15, and the only life in the buildings is the sign that they put on the Of course, we got winter, we gotta have better infrastructure. It's not about not having infrastructure. But if we focus on the nice days, then even those horrible days are not gonna be that horrible. So let's focus on the nice days. And these people, why are they biking so much? Because it's safe. It's separate for the people walking, for the people cycling, for the cars. The cars are at one level, 5 centimeters higher than the people cycling. And then we see people of all ages. And then some of you might be saying, oh, Gil, but you were talking about the winter. Yeah, they not only bike in the summer. 85% of the people that bike in the summer also bike in the winter. Even in Toronto, we used to have a mayor that said traffic is horrible because of the cyclists. Maybe traffic is horrible because there are not enough cyclists. Imagine that each one of those cyclists was on one of those cars. The huge traffic jams. So winter. Let's do activities in the winter. You could do so many things. You could do ice skating all over the place. We gotta ask the media to be positive about winter because, for 6 months of the year, we have the media, the weather people brainwashing us. Tomorrow's gonna be horrible. It's gonna be cold. Bundle up. If you don't have to go to work, don't go to work. If you don't like winter weather person, go to Arizona. But don't do it in Ontario. I mean, we gotta work and do. For example, there are places, some streets here in Amherstburg that you could close, shut down for the winter, and create a skating path where people can come and skate. And don't just put the skating. If you have lights and you have music and hot chocolate and beaver tails. We saw one street. Richard, do you remember the name of the street?
Murray Street.
Huh?
Murray.
That would be fantastic. And then people will come from all over the place. But it's not just the hardware. You gotta do the activities. For example, having movies in the middle of the winter. I mean, that's how people have very long winter, much longer than here in Winnipeg. And they go over the river and they plant all kinds of facilities. I was working in Alaska and they were ice fishing. And one of the things that people don't like about the winter sometimes is not the cold, but it's the darkness, because it's very dark. So let's put lights all over the place. I mean, don't have Christmas lights, because also now it's not politically correct. Christmas lights. Call them winter lights. And let's have it. We have Halloween, people dress up their houses for Halloween. Then October 31st, next week, first week of November, let's put up the lights for winter lights. And we'll have the lights from November to March. I mean, we gotta rethink the winter. And then not about winter, but about streets and public places. Toronto, how they turn the streets into public places when the Raptors won. It's amazing. How they can be one of the things, when you talk about Murray Street, one of the things that ADD did this weekend, we wanted to show the city that you can make a safe street very, very fast and very inexpensive. So we went to the Danforth, and then on Thursday there were only cars. And then we went with a lot of volunteers, a lot of people from the community, started painting lines and painting bikeways and bringing chairs and tables and activities. And then all of a sudden it became a safe place for everybody. People biking with their dogs, people biking with their families. It was showing people that the streets are public, they belong to everybody. So they have to be nice for, when we look at the cities from the air, 30% of the city are streets. The streets are the biggest public space in any city of any size. And we did that over the weekend. And it was almost a slap in the face to the city leaders to say, look, this is not a technical issue, this is not a financial issue, this is a political issue. This is doable. We can have this nice and safe. Safe. It's about the benefits. It's not about the children or the older adults. It's about Amherstburg becoming relevant. attracting people, retaining people. How about the benefits? Everything that we're talking about is going to be better for culture. It's going to be better for education and recreation and environment and economic development. So tell the community, tell the leaders. And some people say, but should we come up with the numbers or what? Is it the heart or the brain? I think that's like the chicken and the egg. Personally, I think it's the heart. Get the decision makers. And then see what is it, or the community or the leaders. See what's important to them. And say, it's not about bike lanes. It's not about parks. It's about health, or it's about recreation. It's about economic development. I mean, if you want to have those people retiring to come and live here and spend $50,000 a year, you gotta have a place that is quality of life. Quality of life has become the most important tool of economic competitiveness. Once you convince them in the heart, then they can get anybody to do the numbers and have their brain, and then you're gonna have heart and brain working together. Let me give you an example. Health. Is this what the future looks like? And it's not how people look with obesity. It's that obesity has to do with heart attacks and respiratory problems and depression and anxiety. And Canada, in the top 35 countries in the world, the 35 wealthiest, is 30th in obesity. In Amherstburg, you could say, I don't care what Canada is, it might be 30, but we are gonna be like the top 5 and do it and change. We gotta improve the school lunch. We gotta have farmers markets all over the community. We gotta have urban gardening so people will learn that tomatoes don't come out of a factory. And we need to be active. It's not about marathons. It's only 30 minutes a day for adults, 60 minutes a day for children, and it's totally doable. There's an urgency to be physically active because people are looking for a magic pill. There is no magic pill, sorry. The only way that the only way is going to be physically active is if people walk or bike as a normal part of everyday life. There is no other way. People might play golf once or twice a week. People might play tennis twice a week or go to the gym. But if we want to large, there is no other community of any size, 10,000 people, 50,000, 100,000, or 10 million that are physically active other than walking or cycling as a normal part of everyday life. That's why I'm putting so much emphasis. And of course, all of this is good for physical health, but there is no health if we don't have mental health. Let's focus on mental health as well. Loneliness. It's a huge problem. The UK, they created the Ministry of Loneliness. If people are lonely, it doubles the possibility of having dementia and heart disease. Depression is the leading cause of disabilities. So we gotta have green places all over. And we gotta be close to nature. And also in the winter, we gotta be able to go and enjoy. It's not just because it looks beautiful, your parks and the green areas. It's also because it's gonna be healthier for everyone. It's gonna be good for our mental health. And if our neighborhoods are green, it's going to lower the depression and the anxiety. So we got to have green everywhere. We got to have it in our homes, in the sidewalks, in the schools, in the places of work, and not just for the summer or fall. We got to have it also in the winter to be able to have that contact and have nature everywhere. And 7, we got to have equity. I'm not talking about equality. It's about equity. Someone did a cartoon that I thought it was really good. Said, this is equality. No, some people are starting so far behind that someone need 2 boxes or 3 boxes, or they don't need any box. And someone said, that's equality and that's equity. Well, this is reality. And maybe in Amherstburg, you are smarter than that. You think outside the box and you say, maybe it's about taking down the walls or doing something different. I mean, we're not doing very well. This is the share of children living in poverty. 1 out of 5 in the US, 1 out of 6 in Canada live in poverty. I mean, South Korea is 1 out of 16, Denmark is 1 out of 37. Maybe you should say, well, we don't care that Canada is 1 out of 6. By the way, Toronto is 1 out of 4. That's why it's so concerning that Toronto's wasting billions of dollars in one-stop subways and things when 1 out of 4 children live in poverty. But here in Amherstburg, you might say, we want to look more like South Korea. We want to look more like Denmark. We want to be different. You can do it. I mean, from the point of view of mobility, the people that have a car are spending 20% of their income on mobility. And this is according to the Canadian Automobile Association that is promoting. If anything, this is biased towards low. Remember the houses that I showed in Amherstburg? Spending 30% of the house for the car. I mean, people will spend only 4% of their income if they could walk or bike or take public transit. And it would be great for the economy as well, because what are people going to do with that money left over? They're going to improve their house and go to the restaurants and go to the coffee shops. I mean, when we evaluate communities anywhere, we should evaluate is how do we treat the most vulnerable citizens? And the most vulnerable are the children, are the elderly. And of course, everybody has a child, and hopefully everybody's going to be elder. But if in addition of child and elder, people are poor, or people have disabilities, or people are of a racial minority or an ethnic minority, or people are women. So we gotta think of them. It's about creating a great community, but it's not about like creating a Disney World for the wealthy and healthy 20 to 60. It's about everybody. What is the role that each one of you are going to play? What is the role that the foundation is going to play? Everybody needs to participate. I want everybody here to go out as a guardian angel of the gentle majority, the people that are not the squeaky wheels, the children, the older adults, the elderly. Let me give you an example. Children. Imagine that in Amherstburg, there was playability everywhere. You go out of a meeting, you go to the sidewalks, and there are swings. We are waiting for public transit, and the small park came. This doesn't cost a lot of money. It's about being a little bit creative, and being a little bit wild, and putting a little bit of color. And it's totally doable. You don't even have to ask these children if they're having fun. You see it in their body lanes that they're having lots of fun. And it's not because playing is fun and games, because obviously it's fun and games, but it's also because playing is how children learn. Playing is how children develop their muscle strength, their cognitive thinking, the capacity to learn languages and friendship and coordination. We gotta have parks everywhere in Amherstburg. Everybody should have parks within walking distance. And think of the little ones, the 0 to 5. Because I have visited many of your parks, and I have seen almost nothing for 0 to 5. Sometimes we think that children need the same thing. They are 3 or 8 or 13 or 18. No, it's very, very different. We are working on a project that is called Urban 95. What is Urban 95? What does a city look like from 95 centimeters height? That is the height of a 3-year-old. I mean, just have a pole with some glasses at 95, and have people get on their knees and look. I mean, when you're walking on the street, the cars, you look above the cars that are parked. When you are 95 centimeters, you don't. When you go to the parks, we gotta think of those. The most important years of the life are the first 5. However, in Ontario, it's more expensive to have to send a child to daycare than to go to the university. I mean, we do the parks and we don't do anything for children 0 to 5. Sometimes I go to cities and I see that the dog parks are fantastic. They know more what makes dogs happy than what makes children 0 to 5 happy. True. So we gotta work on that. We gotta have a goal. Every child should have a park with a short walk everywhere, and it's totally doable. And if you don't have a park, let's think of the streets and the schools and the sidewalks. And then the schools go to the schools and say, okay, this is not a playground. This is just point of payment. Let's make it a park. Let's make it a school park. If and only if you open it to the community after school, Saturdays, Sundays. Why so much green? Because kids are going to have less attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder. The schools can be wonderful hubs of the community in the summer, in the winter, all year round. And if we don't have a school, let's take over a street and make it a play street. But everything that is public, we gotta work with the library and the schools and the streets and everything. And that's children, older adults. The other thing that I was going to recommend you as guardian angels, we're living longer, not longer, much longer. Imagine the people that have ever lived to 60 in the history of humanity, half are alive today. Half. This is something that is quite new, and people are having fun, and people are excited, and maybe we're not ready for that yet. But it's just because we haven't opened our eyes. And if you, almost every time that I go to any city, all the mayors say, Gil, we have a problem. I said, yeah, Mayor, what is the problem? Oh, we have too many old people. I said, first, it's not a problem. Second, it's not just you. Everybody, because we're living longer. And you better get your city ready, because the population over 60 is going to double. And the population over 80 is going to quadruple. The babies that are being born now in Ontario, half of them are going to live over 100. And people are having fun. People are not even thinking of retirement. People are thinking of retirement. It's about being re-engaged. We should develop a movement of citizens alive, older, healthier, happier. The biggest waste of resource that we have are the older people. People retire and we cross them out as if they have died, except that they got 20, 30, 40 years left. And they have experience, and they have knowledge, and they are healthier, and in many cases wealthier. I mean, the university should have 20-30% of the courses for older people, because older people are hungry but of knowledge. They want to take courses of history, sociology, and science. In Canada, we doubled the life expectancy in the last 150 years. We learned how to survive, but with issues like climate change and public health crisis, now we need to learn how to live. And a lot of learning how to live is about the built environment. That's why this is so critical. And with the order, let's work in multi-generations. And now I have a big reason to work in multi-generation, because last year my daughter had my first grandchild. This is kind of magical. For example, every time that you do a playground in Amherstburg, every single playground should have a nice cozy area for parents and grandparents. Otherwise, the grandparent brings the child, and if there's no place to sit, in 5 minutes he's gonna get bored and will go home. But if there's a place to sit and chat and socialize, and there are green areas, it's gonna be great for everybody. I want also everyone here to fight against ageism. What is ageism? It's discrimination by age. And for all ages. We say, don't do this. Why not? Because you are a child. You cannot do that. Why not? Because you are too old. We are bombarded 24 hours a day with multi-billion-dollar promotions against aging. Oh, if you got a wrinkle, go inject this thing. If your hair is turning gray, do these other things. By the way, the happiest time in our lives, the childhood and the old age. The other day I was with a head of parks and recreation. And I said, what do you guys do with older people? He said, we have a special program for people with Alzheimer's. I said, I didn't ask you about health or Alzheimer's. Why is it that the first word that comes to mind is Alzheimer's? Less than 10% of the people will ever get Alzheimer's. And probably less and less all the time. The other 90% get anxiety of Alzheimer's. We forget someone's name and say, I'm getting it. Where are my kids? I'm getting it. Ageism is dumb. Ageism is prejudice against our children. It's prejudice against our parents. It's prejudice against our own future selves. Aging is not a problem to solve. Aging is not a disease to cure. Aging is living. So let's fight ageism. And the last message is that we must change. I know that change is hard. That's why we don't change, because doing more of the same is easy. Many politicians, when they get elected, the number one priority of the night of the election is how to get reelected 4 years from then. And then how to get reelected? Don't rock the boat, do more of the same. No, we need to change because we have not done things as they should be. Why is it that people back in places like Amsterdam or Copenhagen, because during the oil crisis in the 70s, up till then, the car was taking over in the 50s, the 60s, the 70s. When they had the oil crisis, people started to bike, and many people were dying. And then in Amsterdam, they were doing huge demonstrations in front of City Hall, and the newspapers against children being killed. Same thing in Copenhagen, demonstrations. That's when they built the first protected byway in Copenhagen, 1982, and look at what happened with the bicycle. When they were going to create the first pedestrian street in Copenhagen, they said, pedestrian? A street for people walking, we have too many cars, and the weather is horrible. But the number one reason people didn't want, they said, it's not part of our culture. That's for the Italians. Because the Italians are loud and noisy, but we are Danish and we're cold and quiet and we don't go out. Well, now those Danish are more Italian than the Italians. They love their pedestrian streets in the rain, in the summer. This is city hall in Copenhagen. They turned 18 places into people places. They did one pedestrian street, and then the next, and now everybody loves it. And even in the middle. So when you're going to change in Amherstburg, 3 recommendations. First, change is not unanimous. There will always be concern. Second, the general interest must prevail over the particular. So any public meeting, everybody has to talk on behalf of the general interest. And third is when you say no to something, you're also saying yes to something else. Everything has consequences. So when you say, we're not going to do this park, or we don't want to connect the trails so that, you got beautiful trails around the community, but not interwoven into the city. But if you don't connect them, they're not going to be used as much. So everything. So obviously, elections matter. You gotta elect the best people at the federal level, at the city level, at the Board of Education, and of course we gotta have advocacy. The foundation is doing a lot of advocacy that is really, really good, and in a minute I'm gonna tell you 4 great projects, and then activism. Imagine the US, no one could touch the NRA for years and years and years. All of a sudden, some crazy people killed a lot of students in Florida. These students came out and had the NRA against the wall all over the US. Not at the national level, but at the state level. Change. Who would have thought that this 16-year-old girl, Greta, that was demonstrating by herself in Sweden, all of a sudden she called cities around the world, high school students, to have the Fridays for the Future. And over 1,000 cities supported her on the Fridays for the Future. It's amazing what this Greta does. And her message is very clear. I want you to act, she's telling the leaders, as if you were in a crisis, as if the house was on fire, because it is. So So I just want to emphasize, these are not technical issues, these are not financial, this is about policy, but not about political parties. This is about big P. Everybody needs to participate. We gotta move from talking to doing. Amherstburg can find a new way. You gotta be bold. Compare yourself with the best cities in the world with around 20,000 people, with a similar income level, similar education, and develop alliances. This is like a three-legged stool. One of the one of the legs are the elected officials at all levels, at the city, at the Board of Education, at the province. Another one is the public sector staff, but not just the planners. We gotta get public health and economic development and transportation, everybody. And the third leg is the community. The foundation, the universities, the schools, the business. How do we get all three legs together? What is the glue? The glue is the sense of urgency. Making an Amherstburg that is irresistible. Developing a shared vision. But not only the vision, you gotta have action. Because if you only have the vision but you don't have action, then you become frustrated. You know what needs to be done but you don't do it. But with vision and action, we're gonna create a vibrant, a healthier, a happier Amherstburg. So let's do it. Now, thank you very much.